What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to Talking BS. I'm your host, as always, Steven Zamora. If you can, please follow me on Twitter at ZamoraBSB. Best place for any and all show updates. As of recording this, last night was the NBA draft. We had 30 picks taken in the first round. And if you're following me on TikTok or on Twitter, I have been releasing one by one my NBA big board for my top 30 players coming into the NBA draft. So I thought I would go through and give a grade and a little bit of analysis on each of the picks taken in the first round last night. With that said, let's get right into it because otherwise this episode will take way too long. And with that number one overall pick, the Atlanta Hawks select big forward out of France, Zachary Risacher. He's one of the better shooters in the draft. He has very high upside on the defensive end. For Atlanta, they finally get a wing who can pair with Trae Young. They've been needing a wing like that since Trae got drafted back in 2018. Now, me personally, I'm going to be honest. I don't think Risacher has the highest potential in this draft. But out of those top tier guys between Klingen, him, Alex Sarr, and maybe even Stephon Castle, he probably has the highest floor. So I think this was a safer pick by Atlanta. But, safe picks don't always get the best grades. So we're going to go ahead and give that a B. Washington with the number 2 overall pick. Select Alexander Sarr, another guy from France. This guy is a big man, a big center from France. He's about 7'1", 230 pounds. Very good shot blocker, very good rim protector, very mobile, very good on his feet, can guard 1 through 5 very well. Has a high ceiling, probably the highest upside in the entire draft. For Washington, they're just looking for guys who can be building blocks, right? I've been saying all along that Washington just needs to add guys, and they did a really good job in this draft by adding more draft picks to the stash, taking a lot of guys with higher upside, and adding some more youth onto the roster. So besides just Bilal Coulibaly now, they're going to add Alex Sarr, who gives them a really good 1-2 punch defensively. Bilal Coulibaly is really good on perimeter matchups. Alex Sarr will be able to handle a lot of the rim protection duties. So I think that's a really good pairing. And for me, I give this pick a B+. Houston comes in with the number 3 overall pick. On my final big board, he's one of those guys that once you release something, you end up having regrets after you released it. I actually had Reed Shepherd, number 8 on my big board, and then just kept thinking, man, that's just too low. That's too low. He comes in as the number 3 overall pick, and I think this is a great pick by Houston. Shepherd was the best shooter in the draft. He shot 52% from 3. That is nuts. He was tied for the highest vertical at the combine, and he's a very good, smart, high IQ player. I really like this pick a lot. It really is going to help space the floor for the Houston Rockets a ton, and they're going to need that with guys like Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, a lot of these guys who aren't great shooters but very good athletes. So for me, this pick gets an A. With the 4th overall pick, the San Antonio Spurs select Stephon Castle. He was number 2 on my big board personally. I'm a big fan of Stephon Castle. Coming from a winning organization over there at UConn, he's a defensive ace, can guard 1 through 5 pretty easily. A lot of comparisons to Drew Holiday. He's a much bigger version of Drew Holiday, and he can handle a lot of guard duties. He's going to match perfectly with Wembanyama. They're going to give offenses hell. Castle on the perimeter, just stopping all the best perimeter guys. Wembanyama lurking in the paint. If you ever manage to get by him, that is just wild to me. This draft pick deserves an A. Detroit selects at pick number 5, and they take Ron Holland from the G League Ignite. Ron Holland is a very good athlete, big body, big wing, who's going to be able to guard a lot of the team's best players. He can guard some bigger guys down low. He can guard a lot of the quicker guys outside. He is one of the better athletes in the draft. He's shown some offensive flashes as well. He's a pretty good ball handler, good at getting some buckets. The G League Ignite itself had a pretty rough year, but Ron Holland was probably the best player on that team. I think in Detroit, he's going to fit pretty well with those guys. Unfortunately, I just think Detroit needed to aim for some more shooting, and Ron Holland has yet to show that he's going to be a consistent shooter. So that's the only thing that really knocks this grade down a little bit for me. But other than that, I think it's a really good pick. Holland was one of the higher guys on my draft board, so I think this pick makes sense. Take a big swing on the upside, and this draft grade ends up with a B-. With the 6th overall pick, Charlotte selects Tejan Salon from France, another French prospect coming into the NBA in the top 10 draft. It was full of those guys. He is a really tall, long, lengthy wing with a lot of shooting potential. Salon was one of the highest risers in the draft. I remember a couple months ago, he was even projected in the late first round. Some mocks even had him as far back as the early second round. And he has rose all the way up to pick number 6. There is a lot of really good athletic tools there. He is long, he is lengthy, he has a lot of potential on the defensive end. He's shown a good shooting stroke, he has a good form. So it makes sense that he rose so much. I personally think it was a little bit of a reach to pick him here this high with guys like Cody Williams still on the board. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good fit for Charlotte and should fit very well next to Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. So for me, this draft grade gets a B-. At number 7, the Portland Trail Blazers select Donovan Clingan from UConn, another guy coming off of an NCAA championship, along with Stephon Castle. Clingan was the big man that they ran the offense through to win the championship for UConn. He has very good touch, very big guy, very good rebounder, a lot of good positives for Clingan. Doesn't have a ton of upside, in my opinion, but I think he could be a very solid, top 10 center in the NBA one day. Portland already does have DeAndre Ayton, but, DeAndre Ayton isn't, a franchise-changing center or anything like that. I think it was definitely worth the swing, especially considering Clingan was one of my top end prospects in this draft. So to have him slide all the way down to 7, I think is a very smart move by Portland to stay patient and still be able to get a guy that they were really high on. So for me, this grade is an A. With the 8th overall pick, Minnesota trades up to select Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham is a very good, capable 3-level scorer, very good handle, very crafty guy, very good finisher, can score from anywhere on the floor. Before the NBA Combine, he was touted as one of the top 5 prospects in this draft. After the Combine, finding out he was a lot smaller than people had assumed. Turns out he was actually about 6'1", maybe 6'2", with shoes on. He's about 165, 170 pounds, which is one of the smaller players in the NBA. Given that, he started sliding down a lot of draft boards, but my man Tim Conley loves himself some ball handlers. So he moves all the way up to pick number 8, trading a bunch of future assets in order to do so. And I think Rob Dillingham is a very good selection for them, considering Mike Conley's age and all the high salaries on that team. Dillingham will be able to come in and make an immediate impact on that team on a very valuable contract. Dillingham is a little bit small, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to contribute come playoff time or anything. So for me, I give this grade a B. At number 9, Memphis selects big man Zach Edey. Memphis was unfortunately not able to move up in the draft ahead of Portland to select Donovan Clingan, who I believe was their first choice in this draft. So they end up settling for Zach Edey. Zach Edey is a monstrous man. He is about 7'3", the biggest player coming out of college last year. He has really good touch, surprisingly very durable for as big as he is. Great rebounder, very good down on the block, good rim protector. It makes sense for Memphis to try to target a center at that position. I just know that Memphis fans would have rather been able to trade back and select Edey because he probably would have been there, maybe even outside of the lottery. So just because of that, I'm a little bit lower on this selection. So I give this a C. At number 10, Utah selects the wing from CU, Cody Williams, younger brother of Jalen Williams. I actually had Cody number 7 on my big board. I think this is a really good pick by Utah, who could use some more youth and use some more wing depth. Now, Cody was probably the 3rd best player a lot of the times at CU. So I think there is going to take some learning curve for him to be an immediate impact player for Utah. But I do love the upside, and I do think that Cody Williams is going to be a very good player. There are a lot of experts who talk about, the younger brother factor. Guys like Franz Wagner to Mo Wagner and stuff like that, right? Where the younger brother comes in and they're usually better than the older brother. So Utah, if this is true, you guys got yourself a star here. My official grade for this pick is a B+. At number 11, the Chicago Bulls select Matas Buzelis from the G League Ignite. Matas is a well-rounded, very good, smart young wing. He's like a little Lamar Odom-ish, where like he's a really good ball handler, really good playmaker, really good defender. Just kind of does a little bit of everything. As a very good connective piece, he's going to bring a team together really well. For a Chicago Bulls team who's looking to probably rebuild now, talks apparently have gone cold on DeMar DeRozan. Montas will come in and immediately either back up DeMar if those contract talks come back alive, or be able to maybe even start and be a really good connective piece between guys like Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Patrick Williams, guys like that. They're starting to get a good young foundation there in Chicago. And I'm really high on Montas. I think I had him number 6 on my big board. So for me, this grade is an A. At number 12, Oklahoma City selects Nikola Topic from Serbia. Nikola Topic, unfortunately, did suffer an ACL tear right before the NBA draft, which really sucks for that kid because a lot of mocks had him as a top 5 pick in this year's draft. He is the best playmaker in this draft. With the ACL tear and, a lot of recent knee injuries, it is a little scary to select him. This is a very Presti pick, right? Somebody who was a really highly touted prospect sliding down the draft, falling right into the Thunder's lap, and Presti having the guts to take somebody like that. Very, very Oklahoma City Thunder. In my opinion, though, with the 12th overall pick, I would have selected somebody who was actually going to contribute on this team. We're trying to take advantage of a winning situation that we had last year, and we're bringing in somebody who's not going to be playing next year. And when they do come back, probably won't even be able to get many minutes because Oklahoma City is just so stacked with guard play. So even though I'm very high on Topic and I think he could be a really good player, I'm going to give this grade a B-. At number 13, the Sacramento Kings end up staying put and selecting Devin Carter, a guy who slides right into their lap. Really good pick by Sacramento here. I'm very high on Devin Carter. I think he has the potential to be a star in this league. I think he's going to fit seamlessly amongst the rotation of De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, and Malik Monk. He brings a ton of tenacity, some real dog mentality, something that Sacramento's really been missing. I just love this pick personally because I'm so high on Devin Carter and I'm really high on the Sacramento Kings as a whole. So this is a perfect pairing in my opinion. This grade deserves our very first A+. So Washington trades with Portland, sending Denny Advia to the Trailblazers in exchange for the 14th overall pick. And with that pick, they select Bub Carrington from Pitt University. Bub is a very good ball handler, very good creator, one of the best mid-range shooters in the entire draft. I'm very high on Bub. I love Bub. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NBA. The Washington Wizards are taking swings on guys with high upside. They picked Alex Sarr with the 2nd overall pick, who is a very high defensive upside. Bub Carrington is going to be your high offensive upside. So I think it's a very good balance. I think those two picks in themselves are really well done and really well thought out by the front office in Washington. So in my opinion, I give this pick a B+. Next, the Miami Heat select Kel'el Ware from Indiana University. Kel'el Ware is a big man from Indiana, 7'1", really long wingspan, athletic tools, really good intangible stuff. If not questions about, his motor and his work ethic and stuff like that, he probably would have been a top 10 pick. There were even mocks that had him sliding all the way down to the mid-20s, but this kid is just so talented. I could not see him falling that far. Miami gets a really good pick here to a team where work ethic and motor and stuff like that is a non-question. You do not ever get to have a bad work ethic when you're with the Miami Heat. Guys like Jimmy Butler, guys like Pat Riley, guys like Eric Spoelstra will never allow that. So I think that is a great place for Kel'el Ware to fall. He is going to be a great fit next to Bam Adebayo. There are a lot of reports that Bam Adebayo is probably going to be moving to the 4. So Kel'el Ware comes right in at the 5 spot, can space the floor for these guys, can protect the rim really well. I think this is a great pick for Miami. I give this an A. At number 16, the Philadelphia 76ers surprisingly stay put and end up selecting Jared McCain from Duke University. McCain is one of the best shooters in the draft. He's a really good ball handling guard. He has a ton of gravity with his pull-up shooting. Is developing very well as a spot-up shooter as well. I think he's going to work very well in Philadelphia. Embiid creates a ton of gravity just by being Joel Embiid and everybody knowing how much of a scoring threat he is. Tyrese Maxey is a really good point guard. Him and Jared McCain can both play off of each other really well. Now, granted, those are probably the only two players from last year's team that are going to still be on the roster for next season. So Jared McCain fits really well with both of those guys. I think he's going to have a great year in Philadelphia, as long as Philadelphia doesn't go ahead and sign a bunch of guys ahead of him in the depth chart. But as long as he plays, and I really don't see any reason why he wouldn't, I think that's a great pick by Philadelphia. I give this selection an A-. At 17, the Los Angeles Lakers select Dalton Knecht from Tennessee University. Dalton Knecht was a guy that a lot of people had mocked within the top 10. Nobody really had him outside of the lottery, and he slides all the way to 17. Perfect place for him to land in Los Angeles, where he can be an off-ball guy. He can run around off of screens and floppy actions and be an outlet for LeBron James and Anthony Davis and those guys. I think he'll come in and immediately play for them. I think JJ Redick is going to come up with a ton of actions for this kid. I think he very well might end up on the all-rookie team. I think he's going to have a very successful season. I'm very high on this pick. To have him slide all the way to 17 and LA be able to snatch him up like that. So I'm going to go ahead and give this the second A+ of this draft. At number 18, the Orlando Magic select Tristan da Silva from Colorado University. Tristan was arguably the best player at CU last year on a team full of talented players, including KJ Simpson and earlier draft selection Cody Williams. Tristan is a really good shooter, very, very good connective piece, good passer, all-around player, just does all the little things that a team needs. The shooting is probably going to be the biggest thing that Orlando really needs, because if there's one thing Orlando needs, it is shooting. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to get a ton of time between him, Paulo, Franz, Jonathan Isaac. I just don't know if there's a ton of minutes unless Jonathan Isaac gets hurt again. That would really justify this selection. But I do get it. He's a really good player. So I give this grade a B+. At 19, the Toronto Raptors select Jacoby Walter. Walter is a really good, confident movement shooter. He's one of those guys who just will put them up no matter what. He does not care. He believes in himself, and he has the size on the wing to really disrupt a lot of players defensively. He's more of an upside pick right here, but I think he'd be a really good fit in Toronto, especially considering Gary Trent Jr. is hitting free agency. I think this kid can come in and be a Gary Trent Jr. replacement and play pretty well for these guys. Though I will say I didn't have Jacoby Walter this high on my big board, so I'm going to give this draft grade a B-. At number 20, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Jalen Tyson, who is a really good shot creator and a fearless shot taker. He was the offensive hub at Cal, and he has really good size on that wing. So I think personally he's going to end up being your Karis LeVert replacement. Unfortunately, I'm not super high on Jalen Tyson myself. So at the end of the day, I get the pick for Cleveland, but for me, I'm just not a big fan of it, especially considering I and most draft experts around consider Jalen Tyson at the most late first-round pick. So I'm going to end up giving this one a C-. Next up, the New Orleans Pelicans select Yves Missi from Baylor University, a rim-rolling, rim-protecting big man, very much in the mold of a Clint Capella. He is one of the better athletes in the draft. He is one of the bigger guys in the draft and will fit perfectly next to Zion Williamson. New Orleans is looking for a replacement for Jonas Valanciunas, who is probably going to be hitting free agency here. So they needed a new big man to pair next to Zion, and I can't think of a better guy in this draft to pair next to him than Yves Missi. This was a great pick by David Griffin in that front office, and in my opinion, this draft selection deserves an A. At 22, we get another trade. Denver moves up from 28 to number 22 with Phoenix to select Deron Holmes from Dayton University. Deron is a little bit of an undersized big man, but he does everything. He can shoot, he can post, he protects the rim. He has some pretty good mobility, leading a lot of people to believe that he can be a switchable defender. He's a really smart player, very high motor, a lot of good things about this kid. Denver moves up and gives up, I think, 3 extra second-round picks in order to do so. So as much as I love the fit and love the fact that Deron can come in and spell Jokic and spell AG, especially during the regular season, I just think that was a lot of capital to move up a few spots to go and get him. I get it. That was your guy. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and give this one an A-. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks at 23 select AJ Johnson from the NBL in Australia. AJ Johnson is a very quick, very fast guard from the NBL. I think he has some really high potential, but I also think he has a really low floor. To me, this really sounds like Milwaukee was hoping that Duran would fall to them, and the Nuggets ended up leaping ahead of them and taking their guy. And they kind of went with a panic move here and end up selecting somebody who just a lot of people did not even have high in the second round or anything like that. And I think personally, I don't even know if I would have really had him in my mid second round area. This is a very, very big reach for me. I think AJ Johnson has some potential, but he also has a super low floor. So, in my opinion, I'm going to give out our very first F of this draft. At 24, the Washington Wizards select Keyshawn George from Miami University. Washington moves back into the first round to select Keyshawn, who is a young spot-up shooter from Miami who has a lot of size and could be a really good pesky defender eventually in the NBA. Washington takes a swing on a guy here who could be a really good spot-up shooter. He shot well over 40% from three last year. And along with the picks of Alex Sarr and Bub Carrington, this selection makes a little more sense. But in a nutshell, I didn't have a first-round grade on Keyshawn George, so I'm going to go ahead and give this draft grade a B-. With New York's second selection, the one that they actually kept, they select Pacome Dadier from France, a 6'8 wing with a lot of length and a lot of versatility defensively, with a lot of potential as a three-point shooter, either off of the dribble or in spot-up situations. I think it's a pretty good pick for New York, though they did just trade from Mikal Bridges and they just re-signed OG Anunoby. So I don't know if there's going to be a ton of playing opportunity for this kid. I think this is more of a high upside swing because, like I said, he's a young athlete. He's still going to take some time to develop. I personally had a second round grade on Dadier, and with a lot of really good players still on the board, I wasn't so high on this pick. I'm going to give this a C+. With the 26th overall pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Dylan Jones from Weber State University. Dylan Jones is a bully ball type wing guard who can handle the ball really well, really good playmaker, has some really good size, can bring a lot on the defensive end when he really wants to. And Oklahoma City loves players like that. He could dribble, pass, shoot, which is something that Oklahoma City is always looking for. I just personally did not have Dylan Jones very high on my draft board at all. I think I had him as a late second round pick. I just don't think guys with this play style really ever work in the NBA. If you could show me one, please show me one. I just personally am not a big believer in Dylan Jones. So I'm going to give this selection an F. At number 27, Minnesota selects Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois University. Tim Conley goes and gets a guy who, in his first couple years in college, was a very good defender, one of the better defenders in college basketball. He is an elite transition player and a pretty good self-creator in the half court. For Illinois last year, ended up averaging around 23 points a game. Shannon is also one of the better athletes in this draft. So to get him all the way down at 27, I think is a really good pick by Minnesota. Personally, I wanted the Denver Nuggets to select him. I actually had that on my offseason preview that the Denver Nuggets, if stuck at 28, would select Terrence Shannon Jr. But regardless, I think Tim Conley is a really smart GM, and he picked another guy I think is going to be a really good piece for Minnesota in the next season. So with that said, I give this grade an A. With the 28th overall pick selected by the Phoenix Suns, Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn, in my opinion, is the best defender in this draft. He reminds me a lot of OG Anunoby when he was coming out. I think this is a wonderful pick by Phoenix. I think Phoenix has a ton of guys who are already going to have the ball in their hands a ton. So they needed more guys who were going to come in, defend, rebound, do all the little stuff that winning teams need. Ryan Dunn does all that stuff, and he is a dog. He is going to do it with a smile on his face. He is going to be a handful for any opposing wings. This way, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant can focus on the offensive end and allow Ryan Dunn to take on some of those harder defensive assignments. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time in Phoenix. If he can develop a jump shot whatsoever, he is going to be a really good player and one of the better selections in this draft. So I'm going to give this an A+. At 29th overall, the Utah Jazz select Isaiah Collier from the University of Southern California. Isaiah should have been a top 15 pick at the very least in this draft. For some reason, he slid all the way to 29 and fell right into Utah's lap, who needed a long-term and now-term answer at the point guard position. A wonderful selection by Utah to have the Fates just drop a top 15 guy at a position of need right into your lap. I can't give this grade anything else but an A plus, and probably the best pick of the entire draft. And last but not least, at number 30, the NBA champion Boston Celtics, who select Baylor Shireman from Creighton University. Boston just keeps getting richer and richer. For a team who ended the season as by far the best three-point shooting team, they go and get another guy who is one of the best shooters in the draft. He is going to fit in that Boston system like a glove. He can take on a role similar to what Sam Hauser was for Boston last year. I think he's a great pick for the Boston Celtics here. Now, I personally had a second round grade on Baylor, but it wasn't very far into the second round. He was actually one of my higher second round picks. So at pick 30, I think it's a little bit of a reach, but not too much. So I'm going to go ahead and give this draft grade a B. So at the end of the day, the NBA draft was really fun. I know this year was pegged as a draft that didn't have a lot of star potential, but I think there's actually going to be a handful of stars in this draft, especially considering where these guys ended up falling. You know, I think a guy like Devin Carter could be a really good player for Sacramento and end up being a star one day if he ever gets the opportunity. I love the Yves Missy selection by New Orleans. I think he's going to get a ton of time right away, be thrown in the fire with New Orleans, and be a really good fit there. Kalal Ware in Miami is going to get as another big man who's going to get a ton of opportunity and a bunch of time playing, possibly as a starter, and on a team who really needs his style of play. I think it's incredible that Isaiah Collier fell all the way down to 29 to Utah. I think that's going to be a wonderful selection. I think it's going to put a huge chip on his shoulder, and he's going to come in next year and play really well. And of course, I got to shout out my Denver Nuggets for having the guts to move up, select a guy in Deron Holmes that everybody was super in love with and really wanted Denver to select. So I think there's going to be really good players in this draft. I think the future is super bright in the NBA. If you have a disagreement with any of my grades, please let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, though, hit that like before you go. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys so much. Love y'all. Have a wonderful day. Talking BS. We out.